Thank you, Robert. We're going to go on to the next one now. That's Assembly Bill 725, which slid through the Assembly last year with virtually no debate. There was no media coverage. We didn't notice it at Livable California. If it weren't for Maria Calban and her husband in Sherman Oaks and a couple of community leaders in South Los Angeles who read the bill very closely and realized that it was another attack on the single family neighborhoods all over the state, and another bill from the Bay Area. What we see again and again is these bills are written by Bay Area legislators by and large, who have a radically different life and problem in the Bay Area. They don't have, for example, heavily Latino suburbs anywhere in the Bay Area. They don't have any big working class communities of Black homeowners anywhere in the Bay Area. It's become somebody called it a monoculture, one of the big companies that's announced that it's going to pull out of Silicon Valley. It's just filled with money. And so they're writing things from their perspective, and they dominate the debate. They dominate what the governor thinks. They dominate the thinking of Tony Atkins, who is the President pro tem of the Senate and has put Scott Wiener at the top of the pile by giving him his own housing committee. And on the Assembly side, it's followed through by very close allies of Scott Wiener's, including Buffy Wicks, who co-wrote this bill with Scott Wiener. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, so AB 725, it's a massive teardown of neighborhoods bill. Developers and cities will go after single family and duplex areas and put 25% of growth there. It's aimed at the moderate and above moderate parts of RHNA. Again, you mentioned the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which had been guidance in the past, but now will be, as you say, weaponized to make it a mandate. And this is not about affordable housing. It doesn't create affordable housing. What it does is it would wipe out existing communities and replace them with more dense versions of them. So AB 725 would require cities to shoehorn at least 25% of their RHNA housing approvals into established single family and lower density neighborhoods throughout the state. And it's a massive upzoning with all of the same impacts that we've talked about: environmental impacts and impacts to the stability of existing neighborhoods. It would create speculation. It would economically harm people. It would not necessarily contribute anything towards the creation of affordable housing. It's really just another, at best, terribly misguided, at worst, scam. I mean, there's more we could talk about there, but you know, those are the key things. I'll mention one thing. There's some odd language in this bill about directing higher density growth to areas zoned, quote, for 2 units to 35 units per acre. And that's a strange kind of metric to use, and it's language that would not necessarily cause anyone to scratch their head. But in reality, that directly targets low neighborhoods for high density, expensive development. So it's interesting that language, the units per acre, that most people are not familiar with, and most people would not be concerned. They would just read right past it. It's almost like, you know, writing your death warrant in a way where you just don't even realize that you're being executed. But so that language is in there too. It's another concern. And we think that that's why this slid through so quickly, because even other legislators may have been misled or misunderstood what it was that they were voting for or considering.
2 things, Robert. I want to apologize to the Bay Area. I'm getting all sorts of comments in chat. I don't mean that the whole Bay Area is a monoculture, but I am talking about where the legislators are coming from when they put these bills together. They are only thinking about their big contributors, their tech crowd, and they're not thinking about the real people. So that's what I meant. And I apologize for dumping on the Bay Area. I went to school at Stanford. I love the Bay Area. Okay, Robert. Can you talk, Robert, about, I mean, one of the things we think that people didn't notice about this bill is it says something about the future growth will go into areas that have, quote unquote, 2 units to 35 units per acre. Now, an acre is a football field roughly, and 2 units, of course, in an acre on an acre would be single family zoning, and so would 10 units on a football field, and so would 15 units on a football field. But then you get up into the duplexes and the smaller apartments. And I spoke to a city leader in Palo Alto who said that their typical apartment building is around 30 units. So all of these cities who've been doing a good job adding 30-unit buildings would now face, it's not just an attack on single family, it's attack on all of these cities who've been trying to reach their RHNA targets and have been allowing medium size instead of giant towering buildings. And they're all going to be targeted. They don't know it yet.
Yeah, I agree. It would open up thriving working class, middle class neighborhoods to speculators who would destroy existing housing to make way for this high density development. And it would destabilize home ownership, and it would cause widespread displacement of residents. So there are a lot of very harmful effects that would flow from this if it were approved.